Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Mom didn't cry, didn't get hysterical or numb, didn't start cursing men or touchingly pitying her daughter. In general, she behaved in her usual manner. Sitting down, across the table, she reached across the table and stroked Cindy's palm. It was for the best that Cindy saw his true face now and not later. The kind of guy that would leave sooner or later anyway, even at the worst moments in life. If it wasn't for Nancy, it would have been for someone else. Be glad you won't have to regret the lost time and effort. Let's make your favorite lemon cookies for ourselves. Mom, are you kidding me? What cookies? I can't breathe. Cindy sobbed, and Mommy just let her sob, looking on with understanding and involvement. Patiently waiting for the tears to stop, she brought a glass of water and said, putting her arm around her shoulders, "It actually helps a lot in these cases to do something familiar and ordinary. Except for nasty chores like cleaning and washing dishes, of course. My mom hated both, although she loved to cook and could create a culinary miracle from the simplest and cheapest products. I hate doing the dishes and making things clean." Without any caprice, sincerely informed her fans, and frightened fans of free coziness quickly dissolved in space. Cindy didn't work out like Mom. She doesn't know how to stand up for herself. So they take everything away from her. So Robert was taken away. That's what she should do. 6 months ago, Cindy had a happy accident. She was in the right place at the right time, and her humble life changed miraculously. She had just graduated from teacher's college and came to work in a kindergarten. Many old acquaintances were surprised by Cindy's unfashionable choices. At school, she studied well, without much effort, and could have chosen a more prestigious and profitable specialty. Only Nancy's mother, grandmother, and friend were not surprised. They were aware that Cindy loved babies, and babies adored her since Cindy had managed to grow out of baby age herself. It was so, and the calling was pointless to resist. Of course, she will not stop at college, will combine profile studies with work. Cindy was given a junior group of 15 3-year-olds, 10 of them boys, and half of them hyperactive. There's no need to be bored. The whole shift is a roller coaster. Her magical ability to calm children will definitely come in handy here. The 5 little girls in this group are amusingly different. 2 little girls, 2 princesses, and a shy, brooding Jenna. On a walk, some slide off the roof of the children's slide like monkeys, others twirl prominently in pretty dresses, and Jenna gazes at flowers, bugs, and butterflies, trying to remain almost invisible herself. This girl was neither stuffy nor intimidated. She was just cozy enough to ponder alone. After watching her teacher for a couple of days, Jenna decided that she could trust her, and when she felt it necessary, she showed her findings or was the first to bring her drawings. She really loved to draw. Cindy couldn't help herself. Jenna was the one she was most attached to and loved. It was usually Mama who came to get Jenna. She was a small, graceful blonde, a little older than her teacher, gentle, polite, not very talkative. She seemed like an enlarged copy of her little daughter. She raised the child alone. She often looked sad and tired, according to the headmistress. The 3 of them lived together, Jenna, her mother, and her grandmother. But the grandmother had not yet been seen in the kindergarten. The gossip at the daycare center was that she had been against the birth of Cindy's favorite, had persuaded her daughter to have an abortion, and was now fundamentally unhelpful in raising the baby girl. Cindy has become even more infiltrated with the girl. She herself grew up without a father, but in the love and care of her mother and grandmother, never once all her childhood did not doubt. Cindy could have grown up mistrustful and wary, but was prevented by her mother's easygoing nature. Mom was convinced that most people weren't bad. It's just that everyone is very different. Hence the misunderstandings between them. It was Cindy's third month at the daycare center, when instead of Mama Clara came to pick up Jenna, a sturdy, charming, brown-haired man of about 25, energetic hand, with gray-blue eyes and a bright, self-assured smile. It seemed to Cindy that he realized he had made an impression on the young educator, and it was even hurtful. Had Jenna's father remembered her? She thought, and in an instant she understood Jenna, Mom, and out loud she said, "I can't give my child to a stranger. It's for the safety of the children entrusted to us." Jenna's mom had no warning that someone else was coming for her. No question about it. Her stranger replied magnanimously, pulled out his cell phone, made a call, and said into the receiver, "Clara, here is the most beautiful Mary Poppins. To me Jenna does not give. Talk to her in your own voice, that I am not a stranger." And I gave the phone to Cindy. Jenna's mom voice came through. "Excuse me, I forgot to warn you yesterday. My brother arrived and asked Jenna to pick him up so I wouldn't have to run like a fugitive from work." Cindy knew that Clara, the accountant, had a strict boss who would rather stay late at work than leave early. Sometimes all the children are already taken away, and Cindy and Jenna are still walking alone on the playground, waiting for their mom. It's good that Clara will have a little rest, and Jenna will not be offended that she is the last to be picked up. And for some reason, it is very unpleasant that the young man is not Jenna's dad. Though that doesn't mean he doesn't have children of his own. And anyway, why should she be interested in that? "Thanks for your vigilance, Cindy," declared the guy with mocking seriousness. "You can be trusted. Come and see Uncle Jenna. Let's go home." At the exit, he turned around with the girl in his arms. "And my name is Uncle Charles. Goodbye, Uncle Charles." With a reserved smile, Cindy said goodbye and forced herself to immediately turn around and walk from the locker room to the group. Don't let him think he impressed her. She sees uncles like that every day. It's so commonplace, and it's a Hollywood smile, like an ad man or a salesman. Anyway, it didn't work out for Cindy. She kept thinking about Jenna's uncle all evening. And tomorrow he came for his niece again. The usually cautious, reserved Jenna ran toward him, spreading her arms. "Uncle, pardon me for asking, is everything all right with Claire?" Cindy dared to ask. "Everything's fine," Uncle Charles assured her. "I just thought I'd relieve my little sister while I'm here. At least let her get away from the daily evening rush to daycare. My contract's up, so I'm just visiting family for a vacation. I don't know how much yet." I don't know how much. He was probably waiting for Cindy to ask him something. What he did for a living where he worked. But Cindy just nodded and said, "Okay, I see," and immediately felt how stupid and boring it sounded. "Oh, I almost forgot," slapped himself lightly on the forehead of the guy. "This is for you," and held out a box of expensive candy. Cindy and her mom used to get them on holidays. "Thank you." Cindy was surprised. "What's the gift for?" "In honor of our acquaintance." The boy smiled. The next day he brought roses, 5 big cherry roses. Jenna jumped, satisfied with the gift of her favorite educator. Without having time to find the right words, the uncle picked up his niece, promised, "See you tomorrow," and went out the door of the group. Cindy, after a little thought, took the flowers home and told her mother about the new acquaintance. "At least he's not a greedy bastard." Mom laughed carelessly, admiring the bouquet. "The flowers are gorgeous. Now so many men do not give flowers, even funny to say, consider a woman mercantile, for the desire to get a bouquet or drink a cup of coffee in a beautiful coffee shop. They make the stupidest conclusions. Yes, I will always support a man in difficult moments. Do not reproach, share all the hardships, but I do not intend to do it for a known bogeyman. One good thing, you can see them right away. Oh, I got distracted. Mom loved a lyrical digression, as she called it. She didn't share the details of her personal life with Cindy, but she enjoyed thinking out loud, so you could more or less understand what she was going through. Mom had a happy streak. She was always interested in life, even if life was not very smooth. Most likely, it was because of this that she looked younger than her years and all her classmates. Despite her modest income, she did not hover in the clouds, but just a little soaring above the asphalt and lawns. "Do you look surprised and confused?" she asked Cindy. "Why should I be? It's just business as usual. A young man has decided to court you classically. That's not a bad thing, as long as he's not married. I don't advise you to get involved with married men." "You're so pretty, Cindy. Girls have been guessing since they were kids, and you're like a hesitant, modest girl." "Just a piece of antique window dressing." "A modest beauty." Mom always managed to make me feel confident that everything was going to be all right. The next day, Charles came for Jenna again and took out from the inside pocket of his jacket 2 rectangles of theater tickets. "Let's go to the theater on Saturday, shall we? I mean, really, I just want to ask if Cindy would be willing to go out with me." "We could try," Cindy said, "and we have a really good theater." On Saturday evening, Nancy dropped by, caught Cindy packing, and rounded her eyes with amusement. "Wow, you're putting on a dress. Something unusual has happened, and your best friend doesn't know." The mom who heard this snickered and disappeared somewhere. Cindy was a little confused. Her friend guessed the events even on an empty place, and here was such a material proof. Cindy was a stay-at-home mom. Could on ready-made patterns or on orders, coordinated to the smallest detail, could with the connection of his own imagination, when the client himself does not know what he wants. Clients were very different. They paid not only with money, but also with primitive natural exchange, as my mother called it. One girl, sewing a business pantsuit, partially paid with a piece of artificial tie silk. Mom had not been warned of this turn of events. She was counting on the full amount in cash. She and Cindy were just having another dieting spree. That was Mom's expression, too. It's what she called a period of no money. But the girls' times were the same, and she hoped to get out of them by going to the interview, sewing Cindy's mom's suit, and getting her dream job. Informal pay, but it would do. Mom agreed, stroking a narrow section of smooth, navy-colored fabric. And in 2 days, she sewed the girl an elegant tweed suit, and the daughter a simple, elegant dress. Coco Chanel had a little black one and Cindy will have a little turquoise one, she announced. "It looks good on redheads. Mom, it's a masterpiece." Cindy exhaled sincerely, turning around twice in front of the mirror. "But now I have to figure out where to wear it so as not to offend him." "Oh, if only there was a dress, and the occasion will be found," Mom assured me. Nancy tried to borrow the dress once. She was counting on it, but it was made to Cindy's exact measurements. "Nancy, I'll be sure to sew something to fit your tantalizing thighs." Cindy was comforted by her mother, and the dress was waiting on the shoulders in the closet faithful, the only mistress. Now Nancy examined Cindy and made a quick judgment. "I'll assume you just haven't had time to tell me what's new with you. But now you're just not going to get away with it. Nothing much has happened, or you'd be the first to know." Cindy assured me, and it was true. Cindy and Nancy had been friends since kindergarten. Ever since Nancy's parents had come to town and put their daughter in preschool. No one could explain why such different girls had become such good friends, but they hadn't even quarreled once. Somehow there was no reason. Self-loving Nancy, named so in honor of her grandmother, suited her very well, this rare name. There was something icy about it. If their school had been casting for the role of the Snow Queen, Nancy would have been chosen. No one could blame her for anything. She didn't get mad at anyone. She didn't fight with anyone. She didn't gossip about anyone. Nancy was not perfect. She simply had little interest in other people. For a select few, she made an exception. Among them was her childhood friend Cindy. Nancy's mother was very pleased with their friendship. In her opinion, when Charles called, Cindy was long since ready. They were sitting in the kitchen. Mom and Nancy were drinking coffee and chocolate chip cookies, and Cindy was just waiting and trying to appear casual. "I'll be right out," she promised into her phone and looked out the fourth-floor window into the street, followed by Nancy. Charles parked in the driveway, got out of the car, looked up. An Audi. Nancy said, "I wonder if it was a credit car." Everything was going great, as Mom would classically define it. After several years of working in the North, Charles had planned a vacation at his folks' place 2 months. Then he had Bern in his plans, especially since it wasn't far away. He had already bought a studio on the outskirts 2 years ago and had been renting it out all this time. Now he would ask the tenants to vacate the apartment for the landlord, live and look for a job in Bern. Toward the end of his 2nd month in his hometown, Charles made one more item in his plans. One Saturday evening, he unexpectedly came to visit with a bouquet and a cake, met his mother, and immediately announced, "Evelyn, I have serious intentions. I want to marry Cindy. I'll be honest with you, we'll have to wait. I have to find a job in Bern that will provide for my family. I'm used to good wages in the North, but it's harder to find that kind of work in civilization. If I can't find one, I'll go back on shift. I need a bigger apartment for my family instead of a studio. You're a sensible man, Charles. That's not a bad thing. But I'm guessing this is the first time Cindy's heard of your plans together." That was the plain truth. Cindy was caught off guard, and she was no good at pretending. In those 2 months, she had fallen so self-consciously in love that everything else in her life had taken a back seat, seemed unimportant. She felt so good that she was afraid to think about the future, so as not to jinx it with her plans. She had never been superstitious before, but now she was. She dared to look, only very far away. Robert was going to Bern. They would call each other. He would come for the weekend as promised. She would wait and rush the weekend. For how long? She tried not to think. "I wanted to talk to you and Cindy at once." "Cindy, will you be my official bride?" "I will," Cindy said. She had imagined it differently, but she was still very happy. She wanted to hug Robert, but was shy in front of her mother. He was sitting solemn too, like a headmaster at a banquet. "I'll bring the ring from Bern. There's no good jewelry shop here. I'm sorry it was so awkward. We realize not everything can be calculated and planned." Cindy's mom calmed him down. A spontaneous decision isn't always worse than a well-considered one. "Am I lucky to have a mother-in-law?" Charles exclaimed. "With a mother-in-law you are," Mom assured him. "And I'm all for total non-interference." "Yes, Mom is," confirmed Cindy. Even her voice seemed unfamiliar to her. It was more melodious today, because everything was singing inside. Charles could have gone to Bern without this offer. She had not expected anything like this from him. It wouldn't even occur to her to take offense that he wouldn't promise anything. It turns out he really cares for her. He wants her to know that he is serious on his part and to wait for him. Being a bride makes the waiting different. It makes it so much easier for her to wait, and the next week just before Robert left, it was her birthday. Charles had booked a banquet at a cafe for Cindy's closest loved ones. At their side were her mom and Nancy. The groom came with his mom and sister and Jenna. "Cindy, you weren't prepared to meet your future mother-in-law on your birthday, were you?" Nancy whispered to her. "Actually, I was," Cindy admitted. "But if Charles wants it that way, I don't mind. By the way, it's your birthday," Nancy reminded her. Jenna almost stayed in Cindy's arms. It was the first time she had ever been to a banquet, even a small one. All her celebrations had been at home and at daycare. She looked with interest at the decorated table and the beautifully folded napkins. Cindy Mom found an approach to Robert's silent mom, and they talked about fabrics. Mom was generally good with all kinds of people, but she liked her privacy best. Clara, Robert's sister, looked tired, but she tried to seem cheerful and lively. Like she should at a birthday party, she praised Cindy in front of her mom. "Does she really like me, and is she so nice?" Cindy thought gratefully. Nancy walked from table to bar to chat with the bartender, a Chinese man who had been brought to their town and to this bar by some unknown wind. She would gracefully sit down on a stool, showing off her beautiful legs, and the bartender should have been grateful to her. Visitors from the neighboring room began to pull up to the bar, obviously because of the white-haired, unruffled beauty. "You and your friend look nothing alike," Robert's mother, who was watching Nancy, told Cindy. "Of course, we're not sisters." Cindy laughed. She would have liked to spend the evening alone with Charles, but it was all right. Jenna is interested, though. She'll probably spend a few days drawing everything she's memorized. Charles gave Cindy a new cell phone for her birthday, and 2 days later he left for Bern. And the usual routine began. Cindy tried her best to get away from work, to switch. She even tried once again to learn sewing from her mother. "Do you miss her that much?" Mom asked understandingly. "Yes," Cindy admitted. "I didn't even expect myself. I thought that such feelings were invented for novels to make them more interesting for women to read. I was sure I'd live in peace. Look how confident she was, not with your jeans." Mom smiled. "In consolation, I can say that I had strong feelings, and I do not regret it at all, and I am very glad." Charles came every week at first, then became every other weekend. Cindy knew it was hard to spend 12 o'clock on the road after a work week and then drive back a day later. Sometimes you just need to sleep at home and not be disturbed. Charles invited Cindy to his house for New Year's Eve and to show her around Bern. Sometimes you need a change of scenery. Cindy was careful to tell her mother. What would she say to that? "Cindy, you really are an antique. Do you think I'm going to talk you out of it?" "No, of course not. We're not in Victorian England, and you're not a schoolgirl. You're a grown-up, independent girl. It's bound to happen at some point. I'm glad for you that it's not too soon and as it happens, but for love. It's important, believe me." Cindy believed her mother. She was sure, without any proof, that her mother understood love. "Who are you going to spend Christmas with, Grandma?" Once upon a time they lived in this little apartment. The 4 of them, Grandma, Grandpa, and Mom and Cindy. Cindy didn't remember Grandpa very well. He had died early, and Grandma had lived with them for a long time. 2 years ago, she had come from the market and told her from the doorstep that she had met an elderly gentleman there who had selflessly helped her carry potatoes and other miscellaneous root vegetables home. She wouldn't have bought so many if the gentleman hadn't come along. She decided to take a chance. Grandma's acquaintance turned out to be a resident of a neighboring town. He had a house in the private sector where he lived alone. His children lived and worked in Bern and rarely came to visit. His wife had died a few years ago. Christopher had come here for a friend's anniversary, and now he promised to visit more often. Grandma said flirtatiously. Cindy and her mom laughed and forgot about it the next day. Christopher wasn't kidding. He came to see Grandma, and one day she asked her girls for permission to bring him to visit. But Christopher and I aren't students to wander the streets or go to restaurants. He tries to take me out for tea and cakes somewhere. But you can't sit for hours in a supermarket, and we're not interested in the movies. We want to socialize. Of course, Mom and Cindy invited Christopher. He turned out to be a nice man. This ex-physics teacher, a man of rare manhood. He introduced himself with a chuckle. He no longer taught at school, but ran a technical club for children at the local cultural center. It was obvious that he adored his grandmother. He didn't show it on purpose or hide it. Cindy thought it was a little funny at the time, but her mother said she was just a young girl. 6 months later, Grandma and Christopher decided to move in together. Cindy and her mom were invited to visit at Christopher's house, so that they could have peace of mind that Grandma would be living in decent conditions. The house really turned out to be good and even well maintained. Christopher could do everything himself, including women's work. Mom said that she was calm for Grandmother, giving her into safe hands. To Grandmother and Christopher will still have time. Mom answered Cindy's question. And at Christmas, I was also invited to the dacha by a good friend. To be honest, I just wouldn't go if you stayed at home. I would prefer your company. And this way I'll have a romantic Christmas too, maybe. So thank you, daughter. Have a good time in Bern. Cindy and her mother laughed together. She has a wonderful mom after all. Nancy is jealous. You can't talk to her mom like that. You have to choose your words. You can't say the wrong thing. You have to be decent at all times. You have to live by the rules, even the rules your mom doesn't follow. You know what she likes to say? When you're my age, you can do whatever you want. A young girl should behave herself. Where did she get that nonsense from? Nobody thinks like that anymore, only her. Your mom cares what you think and feel. Mine cares that no one can say anything bad about me. That's how we live. I can understand if I was to be married to a millionaire or a sultan. Sultans are millionaires too. Cindy put it in. Continued Nancy, who was not easily thrown off course. So I say there's no point in looking to public opinion. Nobody really thinks about us. Talk for 2 minutes and forget it. Everyone's busy living their own lives, and yet I'm still in the habit of acting the way I used to. Although I'm not under any illusions about meeting a millionaire. Ethan, the hardware store owner, is probably my ceiling. Cindy made no secret of her sympathy for poor Ethan. He'd been a devoted admirer of her friend for almost 4 years. Ever since he'd seen Nancy in a scarlet floor-length dress walking with Cindy from the prom. But while to someone like Cindy's grandmother, Ethan was a decent, serious guy and even a successful businessman, to Nancy he was plain, boring, and rude. But he didn't realize it, because although she argued with her mother, she behaved as she should and didn't get outspoken. Cindy went to Bern for Christmas, and she had never had a happier Christmas, not even as a child, when everything is magical at Christmas time. In the afternoon, Charles would show her around the capital. In the evening, they would go back to his little studio and be alone. Charles said he hadn't made any friends here yet. He only worked, and on weekends, he either went to Cindy's hometown or just slept and watched TV series if he was too tired. Cindy would wake up in the middle of the night and make a wish. They would have friends in Bern when they lived together. They would have a very cozy life and it would be nice to visit them. Cindy helped to choose presents for Robert's mother and sister, and for Jenna, and she also had to drive them. She was a little surprised that Charles didn't want to go to the family by himself. We could spend half the vacation in Bern and half at home. Cindy, I'm exactly at home here. What's there to do there? Where would you and I meet like this? I don't think we'd be able to spend so many nights together. Ma and I aren't exactly close, if you've noticed. I love her, sure, but we don't have much to talk about. Clara likes to whine. She gave birth to Jenna, no one forced her to, and now it's like it's someone else's fault. She's having a hard time. Of course I feel sorry for her, but feeling sorry makes you tired. You're just tired. Cindy hastened to justify him. She would find something to say to his mom, Miranda. Think of something to make them feel good. Everyone gets tired sometimes, even those closest to them. True, Cindy couldn't remember her and her grandmother or her mother ever getting so tired of each other, but men must be different. Sometimes you have to leave them alone so they have time to miss each other. She knows too little about it yet. I wonder how Mom is doing. When she wished them a Merry Christmas, her voice was carefree and happy. Cindy sometimes felt that Mama was the same age as she was. The Christmas holidays had passed. The usual dark routine had returned. The calendar hinted at spring, but it didn't look like spring. Charles visited Cindy and his family less and less often, after 2 weeks or even 3. Cindy understood, or seemed to understand, but she was restless, anxious. The winds rattled the windows at night, and it seemed to sleepless Cindy that it was bad news knocking at the house, which was hidden from her during the day. Weekends without Robert seemed long and useless. Nancy had somehow become a little distant. She had her own things to do. She had even stopped demanding details of Cindy's personal life. Cindy imperceptibly became friends with Clara, Robert's sister. Clara came to visit with Jenna. The girls drank strong tea with a spoonful of homemade herbal balm, a gift from Grandma Christopher, and her mother read Jenna a book or played with her. It was a little funny and very unfamiliar to have someone address Mommy as Baba Evelyn. But it didn't make the mom herself sad at all. Baba is the child's degree of trust. You silly girls, the girls weren't so stupid. They realized that Cindy was pleased that Clara and Jenna were frequenting their house. It was like Charles was getting so close, and Charles said at every call, "Thank you for your consideration for my girls, Cindy." Mama always admonished them to come by more often, and Robert's mom was slow to invite them over. She's that kind of person. Cindy was reassured by her own mom, and by the way, it's even better. Most likely, she is not interested and does not need to know everything about you. Watching you, controlling you, snooping around, it'll be easier for you if you ever get married. Mom said that in the kindest of ways, without innuendo or double meanings. But Cindy still didn't like it, if ever. Nor was anything else unequivocal, after their promises and arrangements, and all the wonderful things between them. In the spring, when the morning was still cold to gloveless hands, but the parks were already filled with pale green smoke from buds barely bursting on the trees, Cindy had been sent to Bern for a conference, a face-to-face conference for child care providers and educators. Probably some of the family child care providers would have liked a change of scenery and a trip to Bern. But the superintendent sent the free Cindy, who was very sympathetic. Young, responsible specialist for all the time of work without conflict with the parents of the pupils. Just the fiancé in Bern, they will see each other. Cindy decided to go without a surprise call. They had not seen each other for more than 2 weeks. An unexpected meeting will make her even happier. "Clara, please don't tell your brother I'm coming. I want to show up out of the blue, surprise him." Clara was silent for a moment, hesitating. And then she asked, "Are you sure, Cindy? Shouldn't we give him a little warning? Do you think your brother would be angry if he saw me? He says he misses me all the time. I don't ask him to. You're right, don't mind him. As my mom likes to say, I'm just very sensitive." The conference started on Monday, and Cindy arrived in Bern on Sunday evening. She took a cab from the subway to Robert's house. She had so many homemade pies and pickles with her. She wanted to catch her breath a little from the road and to look pretty to Charles, not tired. Cindy paid the driver and got out of the cab at the corner of the house. There were roadworks further along, patches on the pavement, and it was a bit of a walk. A couple was saying goodbye at Robert's front door. A shapely girl in a light, unseasonable mini dress and a half coat thrown over her shoulders, with white thick hair down to her shoulders, was kissing a young man on the lips who lightly embraced her below the waist. She broke the kiss, but continued to stare at her companion. It was Charles, slightly wrinkled and pleased with himself. "Should I say hello to your country girl for you?" Cindy heard a familiar voice, playfully melodic, almost flawless. What is she doing here? Nancy laughed softly, turned away from Robert, and faced Cindy. There you go, one leaves and one comes in. She wasn't confused, but she didn't wait for an answer. Nancy was leaving in no particular hurry, in her usual gait, what Cindy's mother used to call a catwalk walk. She had known her friend too long and well. She was convinced that Cindy would not run after her, could not bring herself to move. Cindy's travel bags were frozen in her hands, and she had to at least put them on the pavement to lose all their weight, and her fingers wouldn't stretch, wouldn't obey. Charles, as if nothing had happened, took hold of the handles of the bags and pulled them toward him. "Let's take them and go home." Cindy obediently followed him as if in a fog. In the elevator, she stood looking at her feet, or in the corner, unable to look up at Robert, as if she were afraid of seeing someone else entirely. In the apartment, she sat down on the edge of a chair on the corner of the table, her back to the disassembled sofa. "Bunny, I didn't think you were such a child as your charges in the younger group." Charles addressed her condescendingly. "It's not like you and me, pure physiology. We don't see each other much. I'm a healthy man, and I have needs. I was sure you would realize that, and not come without warning, so as not to embarrass me and yourself. I would never have let you run into each other here if I had known. I'm not afraid of you coming without warning any time." Cindy replied, "Zai, that's why I'm marrying you. You have all the qualities of a good wife. This is your pseudo-girlfriend, with pleasure spend time, but only idiots marry them. Yeah, you're not an idiot. You want a country girl at home who's easy to fool. Zai, don't mess with my head. It doesn't suit you. People like her just want to assert themselves at the expense of others, at least to make a mean comment to someone more fortunate. And you fell for it like a little girl." "Yeah, she gets leftovers, and she convinces herself that she's beaten someone." Cindy listened to him. She dares to look up. He doesn't think he's wrong. He sees himself as a gift, a prize being fought over. I guess it's good to be like that, as long as there are fools like Cindy. She stood up and picked up a smaller bag from the floor. "Here's your other one with the pies in it, and the winter cooking." Charles, with a conciliatory smile, blocked her path by the front door. "Don't be silly, Cindy. Where are you going for the night?" "To a hotel. I have a departmental reservation. I'm here for a conference, not to catch you red-handed." "Wow, we're so strict. Are we rehearsing an insulted wife?" "Let me through." "Yes, come in, of course. I'm a beast. When you cool down, call me where you're staying and when we're free." Let's go out after my work and your conference." He was smiling in a friendly way. It was funny, he didn't even think to hide it, or at least play remorseful. Cindy didn't even have tears. It was like a stone had been placed on her chest. She decided not to call her mom. She wouldn't help anyway. She'd just get upset. She'd think a lot, think in silence, and so order slower. At 7:00 p.m. the next day, when she had just returned to her room, Charles called. Cindy had agreed with herself yesterday that she would not answer the phone, but she broke her promise. People change, realize things, even overnight. You can't rule out that slim little chance. Charles suggested businesslike when she gave him the address where to pick you up. He didn't doubt it at all. She realized wryly. People don't change, you just get to know them better over time. But maybe he was just pretending to be so cynical. If he didn't care about Cindy, he wouldn't be calling now. He'd be taking the opportunity to get rid of his annoying friend easily. Why all those emails and postcards? The calls, the gifts, the introductions to families. He loved her, she couldn't be wrong. She wasn't some posh, unapproachable socialite to win her over out of ego. So he does love her. She just didn't know how to express it the way Cindy wanted to. She gave the address. Charles arrived, quickly, brought a bouquet of white lilies, suggested they go to the premiere of a comedy. He was the same as he'd always been, joking confidently, opening the door with a warning. Cindy wondered if he was pretending, or if he really didn't see that she seemed frozen or petrified now. He was chuckling quietly at the movie, enjoying the evening. And Cindy didn't care much at all about what was happening on the screen around her. "Shall we go home?" he suggested lazily after the movie. "Let's order delivery for dinner, a bottle of wine." Cindy was silent, remembered the Nancy front room, the disassembled bed. "I can't go there yet. You know, this hurts me, and you don't even apologize, even though it's so easy. Just because I love you doesn't mean you can do this to me." "Here we go," Charles said curtly, wrinkling his nose. Everything was fine, and now it's back to this kindergarten stuff. Really, your element is kindergarten. You're in the right profession. He turned and strode leisurely to the car. Cindy could hardly restrain herself from rushing after him. She was afraid. Even his back showed that he might be gone for good, and she could do nothing about it. She can't hold him back, make him regret what he's done and apologize. She can't do anything. She's a hen, she's a hen, she's a pussycat, she's a hen. Nancy's right. The third day of the conference was over. Cindy was going home. Charles still hadn't called. It's a good thing that Mom and Clara, not to disturb her and at the wrong time, didn't call her, but messaged her. It's easier to reply there that everything is fine. The voice in the text is not audible. Before the train, Cindy stopped to buy a small gift for Jenna and went to the train station. Just as she was settling down on a side shelf and the platform slowly floated past, the bell rang. Charles. I ran to the vestibule, tripping over other people's legs, stretched out into the aisle, as if I couldn't answer it in the car. I thought it would be better to speak to you directly, so that there would be no misunderstandings, so that you wouldn't make up things for yourself. Robert's voice sounded soft and almost indifferent. For some reason, Cindy remembered a Methodist at a conference, tired from the presentation and the buffet. You and I shouldn't continue our relationship. I was wrong, I admit it. We're not right for each other. You're over-dramatizing life, and you can get tired of it quickly. We'd both get bored, and if I'm feeling it now, you know there's no point. You can keep the presents, be happy. Say hi to my family, I'll come by sometime. He sent that text and dropped the call. That's what it's called, dropping the call. That Mom's quietly sad expression. Cindy knew it well. Mom, you knew this would happen, and you didn't say anything to me, not once. I'm like an old crow that just wants to caw. I didn't like Charles very much, but my opinion is just my opinion. I'm entitled to be wrong, and it's not that uncommon for me to be wrong. Why would I want to ruin the best parts of my life? There were good things, weren't there? There was. Cindy exhaled. Well then, it's all good. And there's nothing to regret? There was and there will be. Not with him. Do all men look at it that way? Why would I even want to be in a relationship? Come on, don't generalize. They're as different as we are. It's true that fidelity isn't for everyone. Things happen in life. I haven't judged anyone in a long time. But a good, decent man behaves differently. If his girlfriend, especially his fiancée, caught him with someone else. Of course, when he loves someone, even if he doesn't love her anymore, he still behaves differently. And you realize it yourself. Sometimes a guy is an incorrigible womanizer, but he's a good person. In Robert's case, it's not the cheating that matters, it's how he behaved afterwards. You got rid of such a piece of dung daughter. It's worth celebrating. I lost my friends too, Mom. Nancy and I have never had a serious quarrel since we were kids. We trusted each other, and now, even if I wanted to, I couldn't even trust her in the smallest things. It wasn't an accident that she came to Bern to see him. It's deliberate. And Clara herself won't want to keep in touch with me after her brother and I broke up. Nancy wasn't a friend, she was just a traveling companion. People like that are friends when it suits them. If it's not favorable, they'll kick you in the head with their boots and move on. No one to regret either. Clara is not a stupid girl, though her mother and brother think otherwise. She'll figure out who she wants to hang out with. If she distances herself from you, it's because she's embarrassed about her brother. It happens to people with a conscience. Someone else did something bad, and you're embarrassed. When you have to go to work. Mom could jump from one topic to another in a heartbeat. Cindy was used to it, but sometimes she couldn't keep up with Mom's thinking. Monday, today's my arrival day, and tomorrow is my day off after the conference. Going out of town for a weekend of sadness. Or if I'm lucky, not even sad. The friend I spent Christmas with has a cottage in a magical place, almost in the middle of the woods. There are snowdrops in the sunny spots. Mom, you've never introduced me to your friends. Is there something serious here? Just a man I'd love you to meet. His name is No. It's both serious and not serious, a little bit of everything. Anyway, I'm welcome to visit with my daughter, my mom or Christopher. There's a dog and 2 ginger cats. Oranges, tangerines. Let's go. Charles was going on vacation. It was the first time he'd ever been so lucky. He was going on vacation alone without his wife. His wife, having received an invitation to a friend's wedding in Spain, got excited, packed up and flew away, picking up the speed of the Boeing from the very threshold. Not even for the sake of decency do not offer your husband to keep you company. He asked. Nope. The wife shook her head. There will be ours, our yoga course. You are not interested, and I deserve a vacation and complete relaxation. And I want to see a real Spanish wedding, Spanish mother-in-law, and other highlights. And you can go somewhere to make up for it. Does your dad know you need a vacation? And she flew away happy and contented. It was even annoying that he wasn't jealous anymore. Letting her go on vacation alone, just to have a vacation without her husband. They hadn't been together that long. Charles married the daughter of the technical director of a small company with which he worked as a development engineer. They met at a summer corporate retreat where employees could bring a family member with them if they wished. There was a lot of people. contests, fireworks, dancing to pops, all sorts of nonsense for the accountant's amusement. A full-figured but bright, confident brunette came up to him as he was bored at the bar on the open veranda. What kind of cocktail would I like? She wasn't exactly Charles's type, but if she showed interest, it was indecent to ignore the chance. Charles ordered another cocktail. We drank and danced. "I'm going out for a minute," the girl said after the dance. "Stay here, don't leave. While your lady goes to powder her nose, I'll tell you something." The mocking voice of David's colleague sounded behind my shoulder. "So you don't get too excited. It's our boss's daughter. The only favorite, spoiled, does not want to work. She studies here and there. She'll sigh, 'It's not my thing.' She'll go and live in Vietnam, go and study something new again. Dad dreams of marrying her off. She'll be 30 soon. For him, that's the age when girls should be worried about not getting married. I'm talking to you because that's not the best butterfly for your herbarium." Charles managed to say a big thank you to David, only mentally. He grinned and disappeared into the crowd of cowworkers, barely noticing that his companion was returning. If Charles had had any interest in Molly, it had diminished with the news of her parentage. It's better to play the right nerdy careerist to make Molly bored and switch to a more interesting object. You can tell she's a gambler. The careerist turned out Charles not badly, even talented in some places. There's a reason he was in good standing with the company. But that damned careerist Molly, too, had taken a fancy to him. She preferred to think of herself as a romantic, but in fact she was determined, strong-willed, and tenacious. Charles, who liked to set the tone in relationships and get the girls talking, felt driven for the first time. Molly had asked for his phone number herself when she left the corporate party with her dad, and she'd called him herself, never doubting that he'd welcome the call. She could call in the middle of the day. We talked about cars, boats. Charles was invited to go fishing in a narrow circle, in which revolved quite closed, serious John. There was a lot to think about. He seemed to be seen as a future son-in-law. His relationship with Molly was a protracted fling. Charles just didn't want to complicate his life for fear of unintended consequences. In the eyes of Molly's parents, he clearly looked like a well-mannered, serious young man with moral principles who needed more than just a bed. It would be very funny if it wasn't happening to him. Charles, a week before the fishing trip, read several thematic sites and bought himself the right equipment and the right spinning rod with which it is not ashamed to appear in a serious fishing community. He enjoyed fishing as a hobby. He was looking for an upside to his position, and that's the first thing that came to mind. Basically, he just wasn't planning on getting married yet. He was quite happy with the advantages of being single, but if he reconsidered his plans, things were looking up. The second such chance for a guy from a small town, from the most ordinary family, may not be. Without the right acquaintances and favorable kinship, he expected only routine work and slow career growth. That is, if in an office with business trips without a shift, and he didn't want a shift anymore. Charles liked comfort. If he was honest with himself, the prospect of marrying Molly, say, the daughter of the head of the security department, suited him just fine. Gray, with a heavy chin and the look of a school vice principal, would be a really dull option. Molly is bright, draws male attention to herself, and on the whole, she is a good-natured, cheerful girl. If you don't look at the little things, Charles was well aware of what embarrassed him the most. He couldn't stand feminists and seriously believed that most of women's woes are from their influence. He makes the money and dictates the rules. He envisioned his wife as a pretty, gentle girl who owed him a lot and recognized his dominance. He'd had one once. almost 3 years ago in his hometown. It seems it was in another life. Cindy's kindergarten teacher, cozy knave. He actually almost married her, thought she was just right. If I'd gotten my hands on her girlfriend, who was playing hard to get, the hunter's appetite kicked in. And his girl was in the wrong place at the wrong time and saw them. And she walked around with such a reproach in her eyes and seriously waited for repentance, though she had looked him in the mouth before. Charles saw the devil in a quiet pool and changed his mind about getting married. He had achieved everything on his own, not to have his standards imposed on him. Now here we go. He was definitely not going to live by his own rules. Charles hadn't decided overnight Friday and Saturday what line of behavior to take at the informal meeting. John, his 2 friends, and his cousin greeted Charles cordially and did not show their superiority. Late in the evening, when the company drank and dined in a cozy shooting cottage, Evgenevich called Charles to the terrace and asked directly to you seriously with Molly. Just honestly explain like a man to a man. I'll understand. I love your daughter. John stated, Charles, whatever happens, and what's the holdup? She's waiting. It's just a fashion for girls to be independent these days. In fact, they're waiting for a man to take the initiative. You know that without me? I'm not a boy anymore. I realize I can't give her the standard of living she's used to. Caught the Charles part. I'm afraid I'm falling short. I don't want to look like a slick, provincial Alfonso. It's not for me. I realize Molly deserves someone more successful. Look how proud we are. Okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. Now I'll tell you. My daughter has my character. It doesn't matter to us that you're not status. It's all gonna come if you want it to. And you have it. I can see that, and I'm gonna help you. I care about my daughter's happiness, not what anyone thinks. I don't work for myself like Papa Carlo. When you have kids of your own, you'll understand. Molly never wanted to get married. She's never wanted to get married, but she wants to marry you. So don't hesitate and don't procrastinate. Propose. My mother and I will organize any wedding you want. You can have 300 people, or just the 2 of you in the Maldives. Thank you for your understanding, John. Just as long as it works out. That's how Charles got married. Molly didn't want a crowded wedding. She wanted a modest ceremony and a romantic exotic cruise. Weddings are only for drunken guests and hackneyed plots, she said. Charles was grateful to her. First of all, he was bored by crowded gatherings. Second, he realized that his mother and Clara would look out of place against Molly's friends and peers, who were groomed and carefree. Poor, simple relatives of a provincial Alfonso. And no lavish wedding, there is no demonstration of their kin. Charles called home and announced that he was getting married. They would go on a wedding trip, and then they would stop by sometime to visit with gifts. Since then, Charles has never gotten around to stopping by even by himself. Mom came to visit a couple of times at their new apartment. She liked her daughter-in-law, sociable, friendly, energetic. Her son listens to her, and he's very much in favor of control. You can see that. That's what Mom told Charles. He even listened calmly, did not object. His wife really is a good influence. At the airport, looking for his flight on the electronic board, Charles stumbled, stepped on something hard, and almost twisted his foot. He cursed quietly, looked under his feet, and saw a child's wooden pew with letters on it, almost identical to the ones he had as a child. This one rolled farthest away. A thin, red-haired girl was collecting the other cubes in a box a little farther away. He hadn't thought of her in 1,000 years, but he recognized her immediately. Cindy, my goodness. She hadn't changed a bit. Still busy with her children's toys. Well, that's to be expected. She straightened up, looked around for someone Charles hadn't seen. He took advantage of it, jumped up quietly from behind, handed her the ill-fated cube from behind her shoulder, and suddenly in a stern inspector's voice, asked, "What is Cindy suddenly doing at the airport on a weekday?" Accompanying a daycare center on a tour of the uncles of the pilots and aunts of the flight attendants. Cindy shuddered slightly, barely noticeable, and turned around. Confusion and bewilderment flashed in her eyes for a few seconds, but was immediately replaced by a calm smile. "Cindy rests sometimes." With a softly indifferent grin, she replied. She ignored the tactless prank. Charles wanted suddenly to continue the conversation and embarrass her after all. But Cindy saw who she was waiting for. A little girl with a mop of auburn curls and bright red sneakers was running toward her. Behind her came a panting, cheerful girl and a preschool boy. "Mom, it's okay. We're all cleaned up and everything is fine," the little girl reported to Cindy in a ringing voice. "Good for you, Foxy." Cindy laughed. "Take the cubes, put them in Mason's backpack, and don't look in anyone else's backpacks." I played customs with Mason. I found the little girl right away. She looked just like Cindy. Same thick hair, same clear skin with a few freckles. Only her eyes were not light brown, but blue, not almond-shaped, but almost round, big, and mischievous. You can already see that she will grow up to be very beautiful. Charles suddenly thought, "Thank you, Kathy, for putting this gang in order." She turned to her friend. "And I met an old acquaintance while I was waiting for you." And she gave Charles a polite nod. "We should go. Have a nice vacation or business trip." "And to you girls," Charles nodded. The friends separated the children, taking each of them by the hands, and went to the baggage claim line. Somewhere in the middle of the line for the Bali flight, an elderly woman with suitcases was waiting for them. I wonder if he was just choosing between Cyprus and Bali, but he chose Cyprus. It would have been funny if they had flown to the same resort town. But we didn't. And probably, with children choose other resorts, as John likes to say, will be their own children, you will understand. Where did you fly away, carefree, funky mood? Handed over the suitcase, sat at the bar with cognac and coffee. It seemed that at the opposite end of the hall still flashed this four, moms with children. Cindy the girl, about 5 years old. As far as he understood about children, they'd said goodbye just about 6 years ago. He could very well be her father. And his eyes. What's he getting so worked up about, though? There's no such thing as eyes. And if the child had been his, he would have been informed. Sister Clara, who never forgave him for dumping her girlfriend and won't even meet his wife or Cindy herself. But how does it usually go? Let's make up. Love, we're having a baby. Or her mom or his mom. At least as a warning that they might sue for child support. Nobody said a word. It doesn't work that way. So there's probably another option here. Cindy was looking for comfort after they broke up. And here was someone seriously comforting. That's fine. It's better to think that way. Anyway, she's not poor now. She's off to the seaside with the baby. When they met, she'd never been further than Bern. Charles had no intention of thinking about Cindy any further. He was trying to play a game. To guess which of the spicy girls in his line of sight was going where he was going. But the guessing game didn't distract him. There were no really interesting girls in sight, and he kept looking for a familiar silhouette. She had changed. No, she didn't look older. She was still just like a girl, a freshman. Light, graceful. There was a calm confidence about her, and something else elusive that made her stand out among the others. Yes, she'd always had good taste. But it was less and less frequent now, and that was unlikely to change. At least she should be able to enjoy her vacation. Molly called from Spain several times a day, counting nighttime if she suddenly became sad at night, or on the contrary, wanted to immediately share her impressions. To have an affair in such an environment, when at any time can be a video call from his wife, only to fray his nerves. In Cyprus, Charles suddenly realized that he was really tired, and if he hung out not in a bar, not on the beach, then on a fishing trip, in the company of a quiet local uncle of age, John's father-in-law. Charles was even a little scared that he was enjoying this kind of vacation. Is he getting old or something? Somehow very early for this return to Bern, with fishing bikes for John, and normal life went on. For the next year, Molly drove him crazy with mood swings. They couldn't conceive. It got to the point where she decided to see a doctor. She hated going to the doctor. She made an exception for the dentist and presented it as a sacrifice for beauty. Going to the gynecologist was even harder for her. Charles waited doomedly for her to share the details, but breathed a sigh of relief. Molly had suddenly stopped sharing, whispering only to her mother. While she waited for the results of the tests, he did not forget to give her duty signs of attention and did not ask about anything, just to continue to leave him alone. But one day she came not like herself, fell back in the chair, and said with a tremor in her voice, "I have no chance." Here Charles rushed to comfort her, just as she had expected. He did feel a little sorry for her. She wasn't a bad girl. It wasn't fair that she was so unlucky. He said that doctors sometimes make mistakes, that they would still hope and try. You know, all the things you're supposed to do in cases like this. He himself was not depressed. He had no burning desire to have children. To be honest, he saw no tragedy in life without them. The only fat disadvantage he saw was that, without children, Molly would have to take care of him and control him. After another year, Molly, having consulted with Mom and Dad, voiced Charles' decision. They would adopt a child, or rather adopt a child. She wanted a girl. Charles, accustomed to show firmness, but from fright remembered the past and answered categorically and adamantly no. Don't even try to approach me with that proposition again. You've grown up like a greenhouse flower. You don't know life, you have no idea what genes these rejects might have. I don't really believe in upbringing when there's been 7 generations of marginalized people. No matter what you do, the genes will show up. No, that's all. He was sure Molly wouldn't leave him because of that. She loves him too much. She'll whine from time to time. But he put up with that. He thought his marriage was pretty successful overall, better than most. Then, in the late fall, a vaguely familiar, melodic female voice called out to him at the mall. "Oh, Charles." He turned around. He remembered her not at once, but he remembered her. A perky girl with a rare name, Nancy, who had once wanted to wrestle him away from her friend Cindy. She'd really grown up. Pretty, boring, respectable, and by the looks of it, well-to-do. "Hello, Nancy. You look good." "Oh, come on. It's just a courtesy. I'm waiting for a friend. I've been through the galleries twice. If you're not in a hurry, let's have coffee." "Why not? Let's do it." We sat down in a cafe. He only took coffee. Nancy also took cognac. "I'm fine. I don't drive. I'm not good at it. There are people like that." "My husband drives me. It has its advantages. It's convenient, yes. You live in Bern?" "Yes. We moved here 5 years ago. Everything's fine. By the way, Cindy lives here, your ex-fiancée and my ex-girlfriend. I know that from my mom. I shouldn't have looked at you the other day. I just lost a good friend. But I'm okay with that. It's been a long time. Do you have a wife, children, or are you a love tramp, Casanova?" "I have a wife, no children. Not that I know of, anyway." Well then, you don't know much. Nancy remarked without a trace of schadenfreude. You really don't know, or just don't want to know. Charles had already guessed what she was going to tell him. Our Cindy has a daughter with you. Lisa, she's already in school. You'd have to be such a principled girl like Cindy not to ask you for child support. I don't think it's my child. My mother or sister would have told me. Mother, I suppose. If someone had told her, Clara would know, but her friend asked her to keep quiet. When you and Cindy split up, she moved to Bern a couple months later, got a job at a private day care center. Some friend of her mother's, Aunt Evelyn, helped her. Then she married him. Imagine that. And my mom also has a friend at our women's health clinic. She told me that Cindy came to see them and that Cindy was pregnant. It's definitely your baby. When it comes to Cindy, you can be sure. So Cindy and Aunt Evelyn didn't say anything to anyone. It was just a quick getaway to Bern. Cindy left. She gave birth here, and she lives here. I don't know her address. I don't know her phone number, Daddy. Why are you telling me this now? I don't even know. Someone must have told you. You decide whether you need this information or not. Nancy laughed softly. Another 6 months passed. Spring came. Molly had lost weight from worry. Charles had always found thin people more attractive, but his wife didn't like thinness. She'd even forgotten his adamant statement about adoption. She kept asking, demanding, crying. But one day she met him from work, soft, calm, and thoughtful. After dinner, she made them both a cocktail, sank quietly into a chair and said, "You already have a child, so you don't want someone else's. You don't even ask where I went for 2 days. You're not interested. I went to your sister's. I've been wanting to meet her for a while, so I thought, why not now? They're both great sisters and nieces. I got it out of Clara that you had a kid. You know how hard it is to get rid of me, don't you? No, no, no. I'm not gonna fight. That was way before my time. On the contrary, I have something good to offer you. Don't laugh. I've given it a lot of thought, and it's a good thing. Why don't you meet my daughter? Why don't you come and visit us on the weekends? We'll give her gifts, support her financially, just be friends. We'll have a child in the house, and it won't be someone else's child. I know it's not uncommon for a girl to be friends with her stepmother. She's so pretty, your daughter. Clara showed me a picture of her, and very capable, as Clara says. She's a quick learner. Her mother will be very happy that they suddenly have support. Molly, I myself found out 6 months ago by accident that I had a daughter. You may not believe it, but it's true. If her mom needed my support, she wouldn't have kept me in the dark for so many years. She's a different kind of person, a little weird. Clara told me how you two broke up. Tried to be unemotional, smoothing over the facts, probably felt sorry for me. It's not for me to judge you. I had 2 abortions when I was young, and now I have no children. So as far as moralizing goes, that's not for me. If you're uncomfortable talking to your daughter's mom, I'll talk to her. Maybe it's better that way. I'll be honest, I'll explain everything. She'll understand. I'll be Lisa's aunt like Clara. Molly, I always thought you were a practical, reasonable woman, at least adequate. Why do you have such crazy ideas? Well, find yourself a hobby. Don't obsess about the kids. That's ridiculous. If you worked like me, you wouldn't have time to think about nonsense. Aunts, uncles, have you ever thought how stupid I'd feel in this situation? Like you think a lot about my feelings yourself. She wanted to say something else, it was obvious, but she kept quiet. Well, it was great that she had learned to stop, at least for a while. Cindy and Lisa were returning from a sports, ballroom dancing class, walking leisurely. Lisa was enthusiastically telling her news, demonstrating at the same time the new moves she had been working on today. It was very difficult for her to stop right after class. The instructor noted her flexibility and plasticity. The day is warm today. The sun is already warming them, not just shining on them. In the playground outside their house, away from two local grandmothers with strollers, a strange woman sat on a bench. When she saw that Cindy had spotted her, she stood up and walked toward them. A well-groomed brunette with a beautiful tired face, not a single wrinkle, but you could see that she was a grown woman, not a student, but definitely not one of the moms or other relatives of the children from her daycare center. "Hello, are you Cindy and Lisa?" Greetingly, but somewhat tensely, she asked. "Yes, my name is Cindy. This is my daughter." Cindy replied in her tone, but a little wary. This didn't seem like an official visit. "Cindy, do you have a moment to talk privately? Can we talk here?" "Lisa, take a little walk around the grounds. Please chat with our neighbors." "I won't be long." "Okay." The girl replied with a curious glance in the direction of the stranger. "I'll be around if you need me." The brunette smiled, escorting her with an attentive look, and hurriedly introduced herself. "My name is Molly. I'm the wife of Charles, Lisa's father." There was a careful silence between them for a moment. Cindy broke it gently first. "All right, let's get acquainted. I won't even try to hide my bewilderment. Why do you need us?" "If we haven't threatened your family's budget so far, we won't. I realized that a long time ago. That's not why I came to see you. I wanted to ask you to let Lisa meet her father. Has Charles become so shy over the years that he needs an intermediary?" Cindy laughed softly. "If he suddenly wanted to communicate with his daughter, he would have come himself. All the more reason for you to mediate in such a matter. I can see he hasn't changed. He's as indifferent to the feelings of women as ever." "I'm sorry, Molly. No offense. Just the facts." Cindy felt a strange sympathy for her new acquaintance. From Charles's wife, there was no hostility, no sense of superiority. She did not scrutinize Cindy, did not evaluate her, did not compare her with herself. She just looked at her expectantly and thoughtfully, choosing her words. "Cindy, this is going to sound strange, but I would be glad to have my husband's daughter in our home. I have no children of my own, and he doesn't want an adopted one." She fell silent, giving herself pause again to choose her words. "I think I understand. I don't need to explain further." Cindy stopped her. "I'll tell you a platitude. Doctors sometimes make mistakes. I work in a kindergarten. I know many such stories. Every daycare center has a kid whose mom thought she was infertile. Hope for your chance. The attitude helps a lot. As for Lisa, I am getting married in a month, and for Lisa, my future husband is her daddy. She doesn't even question it. By the way, neither do I. Imagine if this were your child and your situation. What would you do?" Yeah, I'm not coming back. Sorry for the stupid idea, the time wasted. I'd have a very different conversation with me if I were you. And I'm sure you'd understand, too." Cindy replied, "Thank you." Molly nodded. She turned and walked toward the parking lot, waving to Lisa as she went. "I felt sorry for myself at first," Cindy thought, looking after her. "I've never been as lonely as she was, though. Sebastian won't arrive from his business trip until tomorrow. Lisa is already asleep, and she's not sleeping a wink. No, there's nothing to be afraid of course Charles won't come. He didn't like to complicate his life, and he was hardly in love. When they parted, Cindy was no longer lying to herself. She was in love with a man she should stay away from in the first place. How could I have been such a blind fool? She asked then, telling her mom. It wasn't even her mom. It was a question of space, but Mom was answering. If we were smart in love, humanity would have died out long ago. Convincingly, she answered, so that doesn't speak to your personal stupidity. It's just the way things work. And I've had that happen to me. What do you think? See, I'm alive and enjoying life. I don't think I could ever really enjoy anything again. And it seemed to me the main thing is you don't force yourself. You don't have fun, not sincerely. You want to wear mourning for love, then wear it. It will end on its own, you'll see. Maybe psychologists would burn me at the stake, but that's what I think. Cindy believed Mom. Mom was not only her own psychologist, but she was also a psychologist to others. Cindy was sure that many of her clients had been coming to her for years, not so much for a closet makeover, but for a chat. They talk to their mom and see that their problems are not so terrible and insoluble. And then came a series of happy coincidences. Mom introduced Cindy to her wonderful friend No. No's older sister Camille was the head of a prestigious private daycare center in Bern and was visiting. And she lured Cindy to join her, even after she learned she was pregnant. Cindy had doubts at first about how she would be alone in Bern with a baby. Camille reassured her. Not alone, we're already family. Your mom and my brother are about to get married. I live alone in a big apartment as it happens. I can't stand being alone. I'd be glad to have your company if you don't like it, or if things don't work out. You can always go home. Cindy was a little shaky. She wasn't ready to leave her mom, her junior group, Jenna. She wondered how Camille would feel. Her mom gave her a shocked look. Don't think I'm kicking you out by deciding to start a new life, but I'd go if I were you. You should try it. It's not just that fate throws up such coincidences to make it easier for you to start over. That's how Cindy ended up in Bern. She lived, worked, raised Lisa, and a year ago, she met Sebastian in a supermarket, accidentally putting a chicken in his cart instead of her own. And it was the last chicken on sale. We laughed. Cindy was already married to Sebastian for 3 years when she found out she was expecting a baby. She went to the antenatal clinic to check in and bumped into Molly at the entrance. She had put on a lot of weight, but it suited her. "Oh, Cindy," she cheered. "Look, you were right. You must be a good witch." She pointed to her prominent belly, and Molly looked different, glowing with a contented calm. "I'm so glad you and Charles are doing well." Cindy said sincerely, "I'm fine, but I have no idea about Charles. We don't talk. I've only been with him for, 2 months since I met him. I tried like a stubborn jackass to get him to adopt a girl from the orphanage. He even stopped calling me by my first name, just Hen. They say I'm obsessed with the desire to have a child. I'm limited, and I really already had something like insanity. I'm used to getting what I want. Of course, it was hard on me. Charles had a young girl. I didn't feel anything special when I found out, but I felt sorry for the girl. I met her and drew a verbal portrait of our mutual Charles out of female solidarity. By the way, we are still friends with her. And Charles she left not immediately, of course, but the main thing herself. I gave up. I decided to get away. I went on vacation alone so I wouldn't have to see his perpetually disgruntled face. And there I had a resort romance, and I suddenly saw thanks to him, and my husband does not love me at all, and I do not love him anymore. I was wrong about him. I'm weird. Why should I be surprised? So I came home and got a divorce. He even quit his job out of fear, as if my father would hurt him. He never would. My dad's the wrong man, and my resort fling turned out to be a serious love affair. Who knew? And now I'm about to be a mom. I'm pretty sure I know the real reasons why Charles and I didn't have kids, He didn't love me, not at all. And it worked for some reason, like contraception. Everyone laughs at me, even my mom. One old doctor said, "Yeah, she's seen cases like this before. I'm not the first, and she believes me. If it feels right, it's right. Bring your baby to our daycare later." Cindy smiled. "I was just going to say, I'll bring my baby to your daycare center." Molly laughed. "I'm having a son. You don't have to wait so long. Come visit us with your husband." And they exchanged phone numbers. Cindy went home happy. She remembered Molly sometimes, and it was a sad memory. It was nice to know that another person's life had changed for the better. It seems like they're definitely going to be family friends. If that's how I feel, that's how it is.